Turning to the next question here, are companies taking specific actions to attract employees to actually come into the office, other than saying, we encourage this, we think it's, the best thing, and, that kind of thing? Have you heard of any incentives that companies are offering to attract people back in, Brad?
So I don't know about incentives. I think, the working group that Chris and I did on transitions, I think we heard some interesting things that companies were doing to try to build interest in coming back, right? So for example, one company talked about how they've been creating these videos of like a day in the life of what it's going to be like back in the office. Part of that's just getting employees comfortable with the idea of this is what it's going to be like when I come back, and reducing maybe some of that anxiety they might have over safety and other issues, but also just to kind of try to get people excited about that. Similarly, for those people that are already back in the office, or trying to encourage them to like post things and, kind of get the word out, right? Again, to build, it's kind of like Chris was saying, I guess in a more positive way, that kind of fear of missing out on what's happening in the office. But I think, across the participants in the working group, it was recognized that it's going to be a challenge, right? Until you get a critical mass back in the office. They've even shared examples of, inviting employees back maybe too early before there was really that critical mass. So employees come back and they're like, great, I'm here in my cubicle all alone. Why am I here, right? So I think it's a delicate balance between phasing this in, but also phasing it in a way that there's enough vibrancy in the office that really encourages employees to not just come in that first time, but continue coming, in regularly.
Yeah. And Joan posted in the Q&A here that her company is offering an additional day of vacation if you self-identify as getting the vaccine and volunteer to come back to work early. So if anybody, does have some other practices and wants to, share those, I think that would be terrific. Chris or Becca, did you hear anything else in your groups?
I think part of what Brad was also hinting at is this has been such a moving goalpost. So the first working group we did on returning to the office was last June or something like that. When back then, I guess we were really overly excited even a year ago that by last summer we're going to have more and more people coming back to the office, which clearly didn't pan out. And so I think because of that, people got excited and then were hesitant, and now they've heard stories about one of their friends went in the office and no one else was there, and they're still doing meetings all day on Zoom or Microsoft Teams or whatever, even though they're in the office. So I think until we get that critical mass, what it means to be back in the office and how to do it where people feel safe and comfortable. And, I think with vaccines increasing, I think that helps. But, still a lot of that's uneven, and companies are hesitant to ask sometimes or certainly to require it. And so I do think it's still a moving goalpost to know what the office will look like. And, states are still changing regulations in terms of spacing in offices and requiring masks and right. So I think until there's something set, it's really still hard to figure out, what that looks like. So I'm guessing it's probably closer to, next year when this is really, so I think it's still going to be a slow buildup. And that's where I think Brad's suggestion and what we heard is get some to come back to try it, get people comfortable, get them, sharing how the experience was, getting more and more people comfortable so that by the time we're ready to do it, people are at a place where it feels right to come back.
Yeah, I think what's amazing, go ahead, Becca, go ahead.
I was just going to say, adding to that and consistent with that, the other thing that I heard about was just having conversations, focus groups, conversations with individual employees, just to get a sense of their comfort level. So this is not an incentive. It's more kind of figuring out where employees are so that will help the organization to kind of figure out what do we need to do to make them more comfortable.
Part of that, where they are, is also where physically are they? Right? We've heard from quite a few companies that they've found, people have, migrated from their job in Silicon Valley to Idaho and Montana. And that's kind of hard to commute into the office in San Jose from Montana. So I think there's still work to be done on that end too, which I think that's where some of the policy piece is going to be, that companies are going to have to make a kind of flagpole statement. We do expect people to be in the office X days per week, because that changes the "hey, I'm in Montana, that's not really convenient for me" conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've heard a lot of companies talk about, finding that employees are elsewhere without, without their knowledge. And now, what steps can they take or should they take around all that? Did you guys hear any of that in the working groups?
I mean, the closest I heard was declaring as a company that we are, going to be in a hybrid mode where you get some flexibility, or that the expectation is 3 days a week or whatever, that some way to do that. And then people can, negotiate around that maybe, or opt out. But I do think there's also clearly tax implications for some of this, right? So that's another way to think about handling it.